Aloha pumehana kākou e nā mo'opuna akana ia puni mai ko o ilimona kala I kumukahi a kala I hoaku o ka mole olu ole hua. Aloha no kākou.
Aloha.
My name is Monty McCumber, and on behalf of the Alumni Board for the Oahu region, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening for this forum here in Ke'elikolani Hale. A few house announcements before we start. If you're here in the auditorium and need to use the restroom, the Lumi Ho'opau Pilikia are on the lower floor, Kane on the Eva end, and then on the Le'ahi end are the Wahine. If you were able to check in right next to the table selling the merchandise, you would have received a little ticket, and that ticket is to redeem a bento. And so mahalo to our folks at Poahi Foundation who are providing the bento. E ho mai ka pa'i ma. If you did not get your bento, my hopo, don't worry, because afterwards you'll be able to go outside and then redeem for your bento. Our evening tonight is really an engaging dialogue between the moderator, who I will introduce in a moment, and our three finalists. Please help me welcome all of them. Tonight is also being live streamed, and so we have Scotty Wong in the back who's doing the live stream. Let's give him a round of applause. He was here very early. And then afterwards too, besides coming to say hello to our finalists, there's different board members around. We have these name tags, and it'd be nice for us to also get to know you folks. So we'll make ourselves available and stop by and say hello. We also want to acknowledge our haumana who are here. Aloha ina haumana. And I'll stop there, and I'd like to introduce our moderator this evening. And as I mentioned, it's a dialogue between our moderator and our guest panelists, or the finalists here. So we won't be taking any questions from the audience, but you are in for a treat. Uncle Neil is known for being, what is the word? Well, I think just being really good at what he does and asking tough questions and pressing for answers that really make a difference. So we're looking forward tonight, and I know you are. So at this time, please help me welcome our moderator, Neil Hannes. Kalamai, I want to jump ahead. You know why? Because the slide is back here. I need to see the slide, but I'm going to call on one of our board members, Mark Crabb, to offer our pulevehe.
Ai, aloha. Iki no I ka la o ka ike, mana no I ka la o ka mana. No in the day of knowing, mana in the day of mana. So it is fitting that trustee finalists are here with us, and you in the audience and live stream to engage as we'll continue throughout the evening. E pule kako. E ko mako mako I loko kani. E hoana ya ko I noa. E hiki mai ko apuni. E maalama ya ko mako hone. O gracious and heavenly God, from the highest of the heavens to the depths of the ocean, to the four corners of the earth, from sunrise to sunset, to zenith to the horizon, from the alpha to the omega, you, Lord, whom we turn to in all things in life. Lord of all lords, King of all kings, God of all gods. Lord, we thank you for this day, that you brought us here, those that are here, and bring them home safely, and those that are to come, to be here in this event, to engage trustee finalists. We thank you, Lord, for the Keli Pawahi, for her foresight in creating the Kamehameha schools, we who are the beneficiaries and good students and trustees. Bless all of us, our families, wherever we may be. God protect them and keep them safe always. All of this we humbly lift up to you in praise and glory in your Son's precious and holy name, Jesus Christ, with love and favor. Amen. And let's sing our doxology, as we always do as alumni. Honani kama kua mau, ke ki me kauhane no, ke a kua mau, ho mai ka iku, ko ke au, ko ke lau. Amen.
Mahalo. Mahalo, Mark. Mahalo, Monty. Aloha ke akua, aloha ina aoma kua, aloha ina kupuna e alaka i mau kākou i ke alapono, aloha ina hoaloha me ka ohana o Kamehameha. Aloha mai kākou pakahi apau. Thank you so much to you here in this audience and to those on watching us streaming for being a part of this evening's program. I want to thank the Alumni Association under not only the leadership that you've seen here, but also Julian Ako, their Pelikikena, for having me back as your moderator for this important activity. It's the third time I've been moderating one of these events, and the first time I've been wearing trousers and shoes for this since the others were on Zoom. So it took a little adjustment in my plan. But I want to thank the Alumni Association not only for engaging me in this event, but also for having this event and finding a way to engage our alumni in a really important part of the process of the governance of Kamehameha schools. You need to be involved. We are involved. And thanks to this Alumni Association region, you know, we have made a difference in that process, and our voices are being heard to an increasing degree. So we shan't let this opportunity go by without the courts hearing what we have to say. So I would thank you for being here and being part of this process, and the alumni for making it possible. Aloha ina hoaloha, all our buddies up here, some really fine friends and candidates for this position. I want to welcome them to the stage and continue the thank yous and the expressions of gratitude by thanking you for your body of work over your careers, your distinguished careers, for stepping up and really making yourself available for this important kuleana, and for being with us tonight and making yourself accessible to our people so that they get to know you and know who you are. So we want to hear from them, not so much me, so we're going to get right to it. And here's how we'll roll tonight. We've got 5 opportunities for you to provide some insights into who you are and what you're thinking and what you think about the needs of our people and the condition of our community and where we can go, and illuminate your views on that. We're not here to judge you, but we're here to hear from you. And so we have these 5 questions. We want to cover a lot of territory, and there's some of them kind of profound questions. So we'll ask you to be brief. So that we can get to all 5 of those questions, and for the first 4 you'll have 3 minutes, and for the last one you'll have 4 minutes to answer. Mapopo, we good?
We're good.
Well, let's get down to it. Well, we got to know who you. And so the first thing we'd like for you to do is to introduce yourself and to talk about your motivations to make this application and your motivations to serve as a trustee of Kamehameha Schools. And we have a very sophisticated batting order here. We're going to start here with Chancellor Mainet Benham. Mainet, aloha.
Aloha, Neil. Thank you very much. And before I get started, I too want to mahalo not only my colleagues here up on the podium with me, but also yourself and the alumni for putting this all together, folks here today and everyone who is watching. Mahalo again for your time and for your interest. My name is Mainet Kapiahiokalani Patikan Ani Benham. I am the daughter of Emmeline Keaunauna Onopua Patikan and Albert Henry Ani. I have my husband here, Robert Benham, and 2 children, one in college at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, Kaimi Benham, and one a junior, a rising senior, Kiana Benham. And on behalf of my ohana, aloha to everyone here, and again, mahalo for your time. You know, I thought really hard about the application last year for this great opportunity. As many of you know, I am currently the chancellor at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, and I've had the pleasure, the honor, the privilege to serve that community in a way that I have never dreamed I ever could. The faculty, the staff, the families, the schools that we work with, the young men and women who have such abundance of joy and hope and will prosper in this world because of everything that not only Kamehameha is doing out there for our communities, but also what the schools and what the university is doing in partnership to provide them with the very best learning and dynamic opportunity to move forward in this world. So in thinking about applying and for this great honor to be selected as one of the finalists, I've had to think of three things. One is I stand on the shoulder of so many ancestors who have provided me with the privilege of the education of this academy and the universities that I went to. I have had the honor to be an educator in so many different schools, and I've had the honor to serve. And that stewardship is extraordinarily important to me, paying it forward, utilizing every experience that I've had so far to be of service in this time of great change and turmoil in our world. So that's my inspiration.
Mahalo, Minette. Mahalo. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. Let's speak into the mics and do a little check. Olin?
Check. Testing. Is it working? No?
Let's make sure you can be heard.
Testing.
Check again?
Check. Testing. There
Yeah,
we go.
there we go.
I think.
Okay. Mahalo sound.
So it's a little soft pohai, just a little soft.
Thank you. Olin, look on, please.
Mahalo and Kunio. You guys can hear me okay? I hear it. Okay. Yeah, mahalo to the association for hosting us and for your interest in taking your time to spend with us. You know, when I think about this question, I'm really thinking about the kauna of leadership. And, you know, to me, it happened again last week. So I was talking to a guy, and he found that I was raised in KPT. And he's completely blown away. He used wow a lot. He's like, wow, you know, I can't believe that you were raised in KPT. And that's about the saddest thing you can tell me. Because what he's really saying is that just because of where you're from, I have no expectation of you to have any type of success. And so this same attitude is still applied to all the kids there. And you guys know what I'm talking about, right? A friend of mine was telling me last week that he reminisced about people telling him, wow, you speak really good English for somebody from Eva Beach. I mean, people think these are compliments. And so for me, when I'm asked to take on leadership positions, I think about the keiki, like this pressure that they're feeling. Like it's pretty suffocating to have these things passed on to you that aren't really true. And so part of what I do is to normalize that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing unusual about Kanaka being excellent, world class even, in education, engineering, leadership. And so when asked to serve, I really think about that piece there, because we really believe at Purple Maya, for example, in normalizing that excellence of Hawaiians. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ola. And let's bring those mics nice and tight to your voice and your mouth so that we make sure we can hear you. Michelle?
Are we on? There we go. Aloha mai. Michelle Kauhane Taka. I am the daughter of William Clarence Kauhane and Valerie Gail Gonzalez, born and raised here on the island of Oahu in Kaneohe. I'm one of two children, my brother Mike and myself, and the mother of one to my son who's sitting in the back somewhere with my husband Mark. I bring with me into this room this evening my Ka'uhane Ohana, the village that raised me. I think that there are so many reasons why I'm able to sit here today, and that is because I stand on the shoulders of the aunties and the uncles and the grandmas and the grandpas and the true community that raised us to be loved by so many. And so for that, I'm honored and privileged to be before you today. My motivation to serve as a Kamehameha trustee, I've worked most of my adult life in and along Hawaiian community. I reside in the homestead of Kaupea in Kapolei. And so serving Hawaiian community, being active in our community, whether that's at a homestead association, a civic club, working in the lo'i, what have you, has not been my job, it's been my life. And all of the things that I've done up to this point in my life, this seems like the natural next step. And what a privilege and honor to be able to sit before you tonight. So my motivation is really to continue. What motivates me to do what I do is that I love serving our lahui. It's both what keeps me up at night and what wakes me up in the morning. And this seems like the next natural step of the evolution of my career, to serve as both a beneficiary of Pauahi and Kuhio. It would be an honor to serve as a trustee for Kamehameha. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Mahalo nui. Just recently back from Aotearoa, where a man named Joe Williams, a Maori leader who serves on the Supreme Court as a justice on the Supreme Court of New Zealand, recently shared these thoughts with a group of Hawaiian leaders. You cannot lead what you don't belong to, and you cannot lead authentically what you do not understand. Kamehameha Schools has adopted goals to cultivate a strong Native Hawaiian identity and deliver a world-class culture-based education. Please highlight experiences that have informed your understanding of our culture and share how this will enable your authentic leadership. Holden, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, thank you. My entire adult life, I've been involved in Native Hawaiian education and culture. A few years ago, my ohana and I restored a li'i, and we've been producing about 2,000 pounds of kalo that we share. And I actually found something out that I didn't know before. So my mom used to ku'i kalo, and then she stopped. But then I was able to resurrect that from her. So it was really amazing that we could connect that up together. And so for many years, I've been disconnected from the Hawaiian community, and so this journey of going back and working has been important to me. I think, though, in terms of the most important thing to me is education. So, for example, about 10 years ago, we started the Purple Maya Foundation. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with our programs, but we're a statewide Hawaiian education institution. So we teach kids to kupuna, everything that's connected to STEM. And so over the years, I've been involved with other organizations like the Royal Order of Kamehameha and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Holden. Michelle, your turn.
Neil, can you just say that one line again that we...
You cannot lead what you do not belong to, and you cannot lead authentically what you don't understand.
Thank you. So in terms of leading what we belong to, as a graduate of Kamehameha Schools, I feel I am a keiki of this aina here in Kapalama, but also have belonged and worked in Hawaiian community, like I said, for most of my adult life, whether that was through financial literacy, through helping families with their own financial situations to be able to get into homes, to belong to a community of homesteaders who have been on the wait list for 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. There's no greater joy than being a part of watching children open a door and run through their home and kapu their room. In our homestead, gathering kids to teach them to be civic leaders, to have them engaged in our day-to-day lives. Those are the kinds of things that I've been engaged in, and so feel that I've had lived experience to help have belonged and feel like a part of this community to be able to serve our lahui well. But I will say probably the most humbling experience in belonging to a community is after graduating from college. I worked in Oahu for about 5 years and then moved to Hawaii Island where my husband fished commercially out of Pohoiki. And as an urban Hawaiian, that was a very different experience in rural Hawaiian community than I have ever imagined. But there, that I was grounded to understand how we have to deal with the woes of both abundance and scarcity, but also seeing another side of Hawaiian community, a brilliance in a fishing community out in Pohoiki who never saw themselves as small businesses, but brilliant navigators of our waters, feeding their families and running successful businesses. So I think that the diversity of all of those experiences from the time I've graduated till now has been a part of who I am, of how I've operated, and have contributed to being a part of our lahui.
Mahalo. Minette?
So mahalo for sharing your stories about your grandparents and the communities, because that helps me to respond to this question. You know, one of the days in my life that I always remember, and I've told this story many times, is being in Ka'ava with my grandpa, who was a fisherman, a Levi'a, and after we went fishing, we would come back and he would hang his nets on the line, and I would lay in the grass and I would look up through the nets into the ocean, and it was just the most beautiful day because Grandpa was sitting there and he was mending his nets, right? The whole, lomi, twist and pull, lomi, twist and pull. And as he sat there, he would tell me stories. He would tell me stories about our family and the abundance of the ocean and the responsibility that we had to each other and how we were connected. And that moment in my life has taught me so much about how to be a leader. There's a he momi, he maka'au, he upanaka ko, right? We are each maka in this net, and it is the job of the fisherman to make sure that your net is well mended and ready to go out for the next day, so that you can catch the abundance of the ocean and serve your family and your community. That he momi has been a part of who I am as a leader, as a person, as a community advocate, as an educator, all brought to me because of my grandfather and the stories he would share with me, laying in the grass in Ka'ava, all salty and just waiting for the fish to be fried so we can eat. Yeah, awesome.
I'm getting kind of hungry listening to you. Those of you who know me know that this question has to be on the list. Aina, inherited from our founders, is a cherished legacy of Kamehameha Li'i and a foundational component of the Kamehameha School's endowment. What role should Aina play in accomplishing the mission of Kamehameha Schools, and what policies would you support to optimize the contributions of these assets? Michelle, we'll begin with you.
The role of Aina, I think, as we all know, Aina and Kanaka are one and the same, right? That healthy land equals healthy people equals healthy land. We are one and the same. I would say that as I was growing up here at Kamehameha, the view of the world and the importance of Aina was different than it is today for the keiki that are growing up and who have experienced language, and their worldview is very different. We've come to understand, and we know that Aina is equally important as our people. It's, again, for me, that's one and the same. I think that Kamehameha has a huge opportunity in terms of its land base, to be creative about business, to be creative about food production, to be creative about those things where our people are struggling. We talk about Hawaii's food systems and how we don't have an abundance of food we're importing. Kamehameha has lands that can and should be, in my opinion, utilized for that. There are excellent opportunities to be working Aina that help for small business, and I think those are all opportunities and a critical part of our mission as a large landowner here in the state of Hawaii.
Mahalo, Michelle. Minette?
Mahalo, Michelle. I've had the great privilege of working with a number of indigenous leaders across the globe. And so I have come to understand Aina, as Carlos Andrade would always tell me. It is everything around you that you're rooted to and that nourishes you, your ancestors, and your legacy into the future. And how important that is for your soul to be rooted in Aina. I wanted to say that primarily because when I had the opportunity to work with tribal colleges on the continent, the trauma that many of them have felt being uprooted from the land of their ancestors and moved is something that was palpable, that I could feel. And how fortunate we are that we're here in Hawaii and we've been working so hard to make sure that the Aina is our teacher and that we are its students and that we can care for it. Right now, I have the opportunity to care for acreage out at UH West Oahu, and it's always trying to balance the educational purposes of that land, the agricultural needs that that land fulfills, as well as balancing it with opportunities for us to have an economic driver to help feed the university as well. So as a steward of that land, I always look for how we can be partners in learning and teaching, how we can balance that with economic prosperity to help support that initiative, and how it can feed and nourish us and our community that we serve.
Mahalo. Olin?
I was born in the Waimanalo homestead, so my family came originally from Hanamaui.
Yeah, get right up to it, Olin. Thank you. If
How about
his
now?
mic volume
There
could
you
be
go.
boosted, that'd be great too.
I was born in the Waimanalo homestead. My family originally came from Hanamaui.
Still cannot hear.
still?
We'll restart your clock here shortly, but let's.
We're going to share. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. So in 1937, my grandpa Kamakau got his homestead lot in Waimanalo, and it completely changed our family, like having access to Aina. And so I think, when I think about the question of Aina, I just think about a lot of Kanaka's suffering. And so, if you look at the metrics of our people, like the number of our Kanaka that are homeless or don't have access to housing or food, that's where I go. And I really think, like, a lot of the work that I've done work with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, with the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, for the Polynesian Voyaging Society. It's all in the spirit of economic development. And so when you ask about what policies I would advocate for, I would be a strong proponent for mission-related investments and program-related investments to combine the Aina with economic development. Because we need jobs. We need to make sure that our keiki stay, that we have opportunities to thrive in our own homelands. And so that's one piece that I would advocate for on the policy side.
Thank you. You're all doing really well on the time, so I'm going to dig a little deeper on this question. And are we preparing to have a school for Hawaiians who live exclusively out of Hawaii because they can't afford Hawaii? And what should Kamehameha schools be doing about that housing issue and the cost of it? The housing issue of Hawaii and the cost of it that's pushing a lot of our local people away, out of state. Is that a mission creep, or is there a role there for Kamehameha schools? Michelle, you look anxious to start.
Yeah, I think COVID taught us a lot. And I think one of the glories of COVID is that we learned how to be virtual. That we have students going to college all over the world in different places without leaving their bedroom. So is there a possibility for us to offer virtual platforms where students and Native Hawaiians who had to leave Hawaii have an opportunity to have a Kamehameha education? I think that's a possibility. I think that COVID has stretched our minds about the way that we can reach students because of that inability to stay home due to cost of living. The better option is for us to just try and solve the affordable housing crisis so that folks who want to be home can be home. But I do think there are ways that we can reach students outside of Hawaii for educational opportunities given what we've just gone through with COVID.
Thank you, Michelle. Olin or Minette, would you like to weigh in? Minette?
Well, I just wanted to say that I agree with Michelle about utilizing distance education as an opportunity. Right now, Auntie Lynette Puglinawan is teaching Ho'oponopono using distance learning, and we have people from all around the world, benefiting from that. But you asked the question about mission creep. If Kamehameha got in the business of providing or finding ways to provide affordable housing. I think that's sort of the core of your question. So, I think this is an interesting question for us to sort of, kind of massage, because people could say you are an educational institution. And as an educational institution, is affordable housing something that you should be paying attention to? And if we consider Kamehameha as being an opportunity to wrap around a family, not only a student, but a family, what could we do? What is the possibility of the usage of some of our land to be able to wrap around a family to provide them with, affordable housing? That's an interesting question. I would say I would want to have the conversation. I can't say that I'd have to think a little bit more about it, but I would love to have the conversation.
Thank you. Olin?
Yeah, so I would stay in the realm of education personally. And so when you look at affordable housing, it's not just the housing, but you have to be able to afford even affordable housing. So I'd computed last month that if you want to get an affordable rent apartment in Kaka'ako, it's still going to cost you $2,900 a month. And you still have to make under a certain amount. So even the affordable housing is not very affordable. And so if you look at UH Manoa, for example, the 10-year average salary after graduating is $53,000 a year. So even that amount is not going to get you affordable housing here in Hawaii. So I think in terms of education, like for example, at the Purple Maya Foundation, we look for gaps. We look for gaps where we can provide STEM-based, still based in Hawaiian Ike, educational opportunities. So like one of our programs is called the Hiapo program. And so if you guys are interested or you know anyone, we get you for 12 weeks. It's a free program. For 12 weeks we train you and we get you into a tech job. And we're now on our 4th cohort and we average a $72,500 starting salary with many of our graduates over 6 figures. So I think there is still some opportunity for Kamehameha to offer a new realm of educational opportunities that provide us the type of income that can get us into some homes that we can afford. So that's one aspect that I would focus in on.
So it's a real ecological perspective.
Right. And the other thing too is like Kamehameha Schools is a large purchaser, so it's got a lot of expenses that it makes. And so I would also look at policies where we could redirect some of that to procure with some of our local families and help with some economic development. And so if you don't invest in your local community to a really high degree, it's really hard to generate a lot of economic development here. So I would really push hard on using some of the trust funds on a mission-related investment or program-related investment, or even the expenses of the foundation to invest in local companies and local Kanaka-owned companies so that we can afford to purchase more Aina. Yeah.
Can you give us an example of mission-related or program-related investment for those who are not familiar with the phrases?
Sure, mission-related investment. So on the trust side, one of the foundation has a large corpus. And the mission of that is to have a world-class return. That is, make as much money as possible to sustain operations. It's a wonderful mission. But a lot of foundations will take a percentage of that and say like 1% or 2% would then go to a fund that would look for an entrepreneur that could produce another benefit as well too. Like for example, a Kamehameha School graduate-owned company or some Kanaka-owned company or some local-owned company. So you're putting those funds into that business. Hopefully you get a good return from that, but you're also providing economic development locally. So that's one example of a mission-related investment.
Thank you. Michelle or Maynette, any more on that question before I go to our next one?
We can move to the next question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I
Well, we're going to come back to it.
it.
We're going to come back to it in a little different way, perhaps.
That's fine.
Kamehameha Schools aspires to see a thriving Lahui within a generation of 25 years. And KS leaders have concluded that the achievement of this goal will require changes in the systems that have compromised the well-being, of Native Hawaiians, and we've been talking about some of them already. Do you agree that systems changes are needed to achieve the vision of a thriving Lahui? If so, what systems need to be changed, and how can Kamehameha schools catalyze that transformation? I believe we're back to Mainette.
So, 3 minutes, right? So I will say that, yes, there's so let me first start off with one of the first things that Kamehameha Schools needs to do is to really take a look at the mental health and well-being of all of our students, the students' families, and our faculty and our staff. I think how we systemically deal with health and well-being at this point in time is extremely important. So that's one area that I would really take a look at and refine and get more engagement from a variety of professionals to help us to address that. I think another area is exactly what you had mentioned, Olin, and that is to really take a look at our educational system, pre-K through post-secondary, and the ways that we are strengthening NOI in terms of learning, in terms of workforce and career-based opportunities, looking for those areas where we need more cyber, more AI, more creative media, digital media, more humanities, more those different areas, those pukas, where we can really begin to strengthen the abundance and the potential economic prosperity of our communities. Those systems, how we arrange our educational system and the learning needs to be addressed. And the last part that I would look at when I'm taking a look at an educational institution is really what we're putting in and what we expect to the outcomes to be. I don't feel that the conversation has yet been done in order for us to have the outcomes that we need in a new 21st century in which we're globally connected but locally grounded. We have not had that conversation yet, and that's a system that we need to revision together as we move forward. So 3 different elements of this net.
Thank you. Ola?
Yeah, that's a good question because we're not thriving. And I've started so many companies, I've hired hundreds of engineers. Guess how many Native Hawaiian engineers, and I've tried, that I've hired for my companies over the years? Just one. Yeah. And yeah, it's we're not preparing our Lahui yet for the 21st century. So I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, for example, where things are taught. I'm not suggesting that the teaching is wrong, but I think there's an opportunity for us to expand and find new ways to grow and learn. Like, for example, I start social ventures for CNHA, Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. I started this first social venture about 20 years ago. So we grew it to about 500 employees, all indigenous, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian. Multi-million-dollar company, changing lives. And then recently they called me back for the next social venture. So CNHA got the largest contract in the city and county of Honolulu's history given to them for the rent relief program. So this is also economic development, finding these opportunities to expand into ventures that have these multiple bottom lines. And so from a policy perspective, that's where I see there is a gap. And I shared that in my vision quite clearly, that I think Kamehameha Schools has a huge kuleana and opportunity for us to use some of the strength of our operations to reinforce and recommit to some of the local jobs and get some of that economic development going. I'm also really concerned about the public schools. So I'm on the board of Seeds of Peace. Like this morning we were talking about, we now have 23 coordinators. And I love what you said about wrapping emotional support services. We want teachers to teach and students to learn. And that's not happening in the public school system. When I went there, I got twice pulled a gun on me in school. I went to Farrington High School. They were so advanced that there were paperless everywhere, including the bathroom, right? So it was just like really, really hard for you to focus and study. So I think these wraparound services are absolutely critical, and I think there's kuleana for Kamehameha Schools that already invest heavily in the community for us to expand on those wraparound services. I would look at policies around that as well.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, so systems change, that's a big issue to tackle. And I think we throw those words around without really truly understanding. Do I think that Kamehameha will undo the systems that got us to where we are today? It might take longer than 25 years. And when we talk about systems, I just want to be clear that the system is producing exactly what it intended to produce. Right? So when we talk about Aina and we talk about displacement of our people from the land and that disconnection and the importance of reconnecting to land, where we see the downfalls of Kanaka, why we're highly incarcerated, less educated, and all of the statistics that you're well aware of, that was designed by a system created through the Mahele that made land ownership something different for Kanaka than it meant to anyone else. They hulied our own system, that we were not owners of land, we were stewards of land. And to rebuild systems where we're ma'a, to rebuild systems that put us in positions where we have confidence again, it's taking some time. Education is crucial to that. But when we talk about systems, we need to explore what about the systems are failing our children? What exactly is it in the system that we are not producing the kinds of results, the kinds of engineers that you need for your businesses? What is it? And I think it could take us longer than 25 years. I think we need to start talking about, we're doing a lot of it at the foundation today. What does the system look like today? How is it operating? And it takes a lot of really deep thinking about all components of the education system. What would we like it to look like? And what do we have to test to agitate over time? And in those 25 years, we might find things that are going to work to advance the system and improve the outcomes for our students. And those that don't work, it's an iterative process that we try over and over again. But I think a lot of folks are talking about systems change as a fancy word. But what does that really mean, right? Why is the education system failing Hawaiian students? And I think there's a lot of deep digging that we need to do to figure out the parts of the system that are working. I think this reconnection to Aina, the reclaiming of our language, being proud of our indigenous ways, those build confidence in our students and make them feel good, to what you talked about, Olin, in the beginning, these implicit biases that we grow up believing. That's a huge part, and what Mainette mentioned around the mental health of students and really changing and agitating those systems.
Thank you all very much. The question is a setup a little bit for kind of a negative state of thought. Give us some hope. Point to something that you see where the systems can change. We're on the cusp of some big breakthrough, and we can do this, and you'd like to lead it. Who'd like to, any of you?
What is the question? Think of a poem?
The question is about hope. When we think about all these systems that are working against our people and so forth, it seems a little overwhelming. Let's give ourselves a sense of hope. Where's that next breakthrough? And we're ready for it.
Yeah, I think for me, the breakthrough is with us. It's with our kuleana. I was in Maui. I was mentoring one of our 8th grade students at a school where every kid was kicked out of the DOE. And so I asked her this question. I was like, you have a computer at home? Because she wanted to learn how to build video games. And it was a real terrible question. She said, Uncle, I live on the beach. I don't even have electricity. And so I ended up mentoring her, and it was amazing. She was going so quickly. She created 2 video games. And I learned something from her. I was watching her progress remotely, and we were giving her these quizzes, and she was taking these quizzes and doing amazing, and then there's nothing at all. And then amazing and nothing at all. So what I was measuring was the wrong thing. What was happening is when she was not progressing, I thought it was because she was houseless and was having some issues. No, she was stopping her work and helping the other kids. It's the most beautiful thing I've seen in education, and so I think there's a lot of hope that we can change the paradigm. Like when we teach kids about computer science and about a circuit board, for example, we don't want that to be foreign technology. We take them to the lo'i. or Honolulu. Start in the mountain, right? You see the vai coming down, you store it, you pull it. It goes from this lo'i to the next. You have to speed up the water, slow it down. There's all these things that move the water around. Then when we look at a circuit board, it's the exact same thing, but with electrons. You know, capacitors, batteries, and so we can teach these kids that these things that we're learning are part of our heritage too. Like, it's not foreign given to us. And that has tremendous opportunities to get kids bought in and thriving in these things. So I think for me, some of the hope that I see is just how we teach within the context of Hawaiian Ike has been absolutely transformative. And there still is a huge Kuleana First family. I think we still have to, like, for example, that girl that was houseless, she thrived so much that her mom ended up pulling her out of the program because it was too much for her. And so, you know, I still think that we still have to work on those wraparound services for the families as well.
Thank you. Minette, Michelle, would you like to weigh in on that?
Sure, I love that story. I really do, and I totally agree with you. You know, the experience that I have had working in a number of educational institutions with indigenous and non-indigenous scholars is simply this, and I want to use the example, I'm sorry to use this example of UH West Oahu, but there are two Kamehameha School graduates, one first PhD in applied mathematics and one PhD in physics and engineering, who are both professors there. Bella Young is teaching applied mathematics utilizing navigation, traditional forms of navigation. Lelemia Irvine is teaching physics through the use of ole about winds and about rains. And what I've learned over the years is that when you bring together exactly what you said, the ike of the land, of the people, whether they're living in tribal lands on the continent or living in Aotearoa or they're living here, right? When you bring together the ike of the place, along with the science that we have and the technological capacity that we have right now, that just enriches the learning opportunities for many of our students, both native and non-native, right? And if we take a look at increasing that kind of pedagogical approach in developing learning and teaching from pre-kindergarten all through post-secondary, and we begin to introduce people to, you know, other Pacific perspectives, other indigenous perspectives, other ways of seeing the world into that learning experience, we begin to provide an opportunity to cultivate a real sense of humanity, a real sense of compassion and understanding, you know, that will give us hope, you know, going into the future.
Thank you. Michelle.
I think I'm hopeful every day just watching our community around us, that regardless of the struggle and the strife, I feel hopeful every day. I see leaders in every single seat. To what Olin was saying earlier today, it's about our mindset embracing that we have leaders, we have amazing leaders in our community. We really, and that makes me hopeful. I think our community is much more engaged today than we have been in the last 40, 50 years in really, to see our students here, to see younger folks getting really activated, to be elevating their voices. I'm hopeful about the Kanaka voices I hear and see at various levels, at the local, state, federal level. All of those things bring me hope. I think that one of the things that we really have grappled with as a Hawaiian community is that there have been years of mistrust, but this education around our true history and embracing that, not for anger and backwards movement, but for healing so that we can not replicate the same mistakes and move forward. I'm hopeful about that. I'm hopeful about the historical truth-telling that is happening so that healing can occur, so that the trajectory for our people will look different. All of those things make me feel hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. This past weekend, we celebrated the launch of Hokulea. And with the revival of our wayfinding traditions, the word vision has become front and center, very important. What's the island that you see? That friend of mine in New Zealand, Joe Williams, said this about it. He said, a vision without hard work is just words. Hard work without a vision is just labor. So you each wrote wonderful vision statements as part of your submittal, as well as good cover letters and your resume. What I'd like to do is drill down now on some of your vision statements individually. And Olin, we begin with you. You envision that to improve the capability of people of Hawaiian ancestry, Kamehameha should expand the diversity of intelligences on campus, expand community education investments, enable KS employees to be well-being warriors, dedicate part of trust funds to program-related investments, and evaluate KS expenses as beneficiary investments. What distinguishes your vision from what the schools have long endeavored to accomplish? And what boosts your confidence that you will have transformative impact?
Yeah, I think you started off talking about Hokulea. And so before they went on their worldwide voyage, I was contacted because they needed a voyaging management system. So this is software that doesn't exist. Like when you're traveling around the world and you get to Samoa, who do you see? What was there before? What gifts did you bring? Like it was so complex and so us that there's a lot of design that had to go into that. So you reminded me of that. And so just a lot of good memories around that. And I think with my vision, for the last 25 years, I have started company after company that's really laser focused on providing opportunities for our lahui. Because we're not thriving, but we can be. And it's really not hard to do. And so I think what makes my vision, I guess one of the questions was how successful it would be in implementing my vision. That's really a function of your track record. And to give you one example of how amazing our community is, like once I was running this indigenous company, we had 500 employees, all indigenous, and then my first son was born, amazing day. And then so my staff had passed around a note card, and eventually it got to me 2 weeks late, and they were so sorry, like, we're so sorry it got stuck on someone's desk. But that was the vision that I got to create the first crowdfunding company. So we invented crowdfunding here in Hawaii, got the patents for it. And our very first crowdfunding event, so the world's first crowdfunding event was for Hokulea. A lot of people don't realize that, so when you mentioned that as well too. So I think my vision is that I can use some of the things that I've learned, which is really community-based economic development, and run some things that are slightly different. And we have some hope. So where it's different from Kamehameha schools is right now there isn't a focus on program-related investments or mission-related investments, for example. And so that's one place where I would work hard to try and implement that. You mentioned about the school. My two sons went to the school, and as a father, I feel bad that all of the intelligences of our community is not represented here. So I realize this is a pretty bold statement, but what about our keiki with special needs? And where can they go? And so these are conversations I think we should be having. Like, should we be expanding that on campus? I think we can afford that. And it's just as valid to have their mana'o incorporated into what we're doing here too. So there's definitely some places where I have expanded on the current vision because I think we can afford to expand it.
Thank you very much. Michelle? Oh, excuse me, I got to read you your vision. Although I'm sure you know it. You envision producing equitable educational outcomes that prepare students to be the solution-driven answer to meet the critical needs of our community by creating opportunities for college preparedness, career readiness, and community engagement. So what distinguishes your vision from what the schools have long endeavored to accomplish? And what boosts your confidence that you will have transformative impact?
I think Kamehameha has been doing a good job of preparing our students to encourage college. I think that there are a lot of other avenues. There are entrepreneurs, there are livable wages and other opportunities. I think Olin is absolutely correct that students with learning differences don't have a place here. And sometimes though that is a brilliance that's hidden. And so I think that there are opportunities for us to expand with the asset base that Kamehameha has to be able to support a plethora of opportunities in the educational realm. Not just college-bound students, but students who want to start businesses, students who want to work in trades, students who can find livable wages that allow them to be home here, that there are many paths. I think we could do a better job about what it means to be an active participant in your community. That we have an opportunity to actively engage our student body, our alumni, to be really active participants, to elevate the voice of Hawaiian community more broadly, and to really enforce the importance of that engagement and servant leadership in our community, so that we are seen as active members. I think that there is an expectation that we're inactive, but we have huge opportunity, and I think that Kamehameha has been doing those things. I think we can do better. I think that our connectivity to community can be better. I want to see us not be trustees of a school, but a school that has amazing trustees. And I think that there's lots more connectivity that we can do in and with community to improve on that.
Mahalo, Michelle. Maynette, let me read your excerpts of your vision statement. You envision supporting work that develops human capacity and potential, normalizes essential cultural norms, languages, and practices, engages and strengthens networks across the community, fosters local and global engagements that generate economic opportunity and upward mobility, and shapes productive avenues for our learning environments to serve as a place for generative knowledge, dynamic learning and teaching, and forward-moving leadership. What distinguishes your vision from what the schools have long endeavored to accomplish, and what boosts your confidence that you will have transformative impact?
So my vision comes from a very long career of work in a variety of communities, indigenous communities, rural communities, natives and urban communities, who are seeking a sense of connection, a sense of pilina with one another, to build on the abundance of what they bring as a community, as a culture, their stories, how they network that energy and that power to create opportunities for their children, for the generations to come, to be successful in the lands that they choose and the places that they choose to be. What Kamehameha needs to begin to think about doing is how we use our assets to support this, as I said, wraparound community of learners. I always talk at the university about this idea of kua'ana kaikaina, and that is the elder and the younger sibling, and how we work in education to ensure that that relationship in how we learn, how we teach, how we move forward, how we make a difference in the community, how the dynamic of that relationship is really at the core of learning and teaching and transforming communities, is how the elder sibling and the younger sibling work together to move forward. And that's one of the things that we need to do more of. We need to have more of those relationships between our community, our adults, our kupuna. We have to build that that intergenerational community-based learning system in all of our communities, and I really believe that Kamehameha can do that. We have the capacity to do that, and we have the deep kuleana to do that kind of relational building.
Mahalo, mahalo. Well, folks, we're in the bonus round now because the trustee finalists have been amazingly brief and to the point, and so I think we have a little extra time. We can ask a couple of questions. And the first question I have for each of you is, what question did I not ask that you think I should have? That points to us, that puts a head on a very important issue that we're facing today that we're not talking about. Michelle?
I think one of the issues that we're facing today that we haven't talked so much about is really around the social and economic mobility of our people, that the struggle and the reality of why we have more of our Hawaiians living outside of Hawaii. We know that's because of affordable housing, and what role does education play in that? So, I mean, I just think that there is, it's through education and that we have opportunities to really improve the social and economic mobility of our people. I think Olin, I agree with him 100% on our investments and thinking differently about social impact, that this cross between not just financial return on investment, but the social returns on those investments, that there's a lot more to think about that could be supporting the social and economic mobility of our people. That it's not just the investment portfolio and the highest return of dollars, but the highest return, how do we measure the ability for our people to stay home if they want to be home? How do we measure the impact of growth in small business? So I think that we could have a little bit more discussion about the realities of the inability for social and economic mobility of our people. And I agree with Olin 100%, having run a CDFI and working in that field about social impact investment, that the cross between those two things is a huge opportunity that we have to explore.
Thank you, Michelle. Minette?
I would agree with that, Michelle. But a question perhaps that might have I think generated some interesting conversation has much more to do with the responsibility of our ohana, of our community. What is our responsibility to the education of our youth? You know, where do we all stand on what our responsibility is? That's my question.
Yep. Mahalo. Ola?
I thought you were going to ask us some easy questions.
I thought he was going to answer our question.
Oh, yeah. So now we can interview you.
Yeah.
So, Uncle Neil. No, I thought you would ask us a couple of questions, like one around the greatest risk to Kamehameha. As a trustee, we have to navigate that. And so I thought maybe there would be a question around that.
Yeah.
The other question I thought you might ask is, historically, the amount of aid going to non-campus educational programs has increased. So for every $2 spent on campus, $1 spent out in the community. And so a question around, is that the right direction? Should that expand? What's the best mix there? Like, that's how I was caught. I was a Kamehameha Schools fellow, and so that's where Paul, his net, was able to catch me on that community side. And so there's a lot of keiki that get caught in that net outside of the campus programs. I thought you might have asked something about that.
Well, I really like your first question. Let's drill down on that one. What are the greatest risks Kamehameha Schools is facing right now? Would you like to lead on that?
Sure. So I guess I asked it, yeah. So I guess a couple of years ago, I would have thought that it was the Supreme Court and perhaps some challenges to the Hawaiian Preference Program. And it's still a risk. I mean, this year the Supreme Court's going to tackle affirmative action. Justice Kavanaugh, who's now a justice, during Kaitana versus Rice, he said some really derogatory things towards Hawaiians. We're not indigenous. Why is there a school that has preference? And they're going to rule on things that could be really, really impactful. To that note, I had lunch with Governor Kaitano to ask him directly, like, what do you think? I met with some law school professors to get their thoughts, and I'm not as worried as I was a couple of years ago, but it's still definitely a concern. To me, the biggest concern is what Michelle is talking about. Like, we're not thriving. We're absolutely not thriving. Every single metric is going down. 41% of our prisoners are Hawaiian. If you go to the prison right now, every other person you meet is Hawaiian. That's just wrong. We have the highest rates of dropout, the highest rates of diabetes. I mean, every single bad metric is there. And there's some huge kuleana that Kamehameha schools can step up to and contribute in ways that would not affect the mission of the school, but rather enhance it. Because you can't just teach a kid. Like my son Noah, when he was a student here, I remember he lost a couple of his friends because their families were having a really hard time keeping their families together. And so there's a lot of these wraparound services that Manette is talking about that I think that's where the risk I see there. We got to jump in there, and there's some things that we can do, and I laid some of those things out in my vision statement.
Thank you. Michelle, can you speak to the risk issue?
Sure. I am a believer that the risk to our preference policy is still highly prevalent and a huge concern. I do think that continues to be a risk. I think as trustees, we have kuleana to uphold Po'ahi's will, and she saw then what we're talking about now about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she made bold moves to ensure that there would be equity for Native Hawaiian learners. So I think that continues to be a challenge. I also think that the new challenge coming out of, not that we're completely out, but because of the COVID pandemic, is that there's a challenge around mental health of our youth. And it's a challenge that we're not always talking about, or that might not be so visible, but the attempted suicide rate amongst Native Hawaiian youth is alarming. Not just Native Hawaiians, but Native populations across the country. And I think we need to start having honest conversations about the mental health, preparing our leaders to understand what's happening at home, and to be trauma-informed. Our state is making moves to be a trauma-informed state so that we know how to handle situations because we have such young minds. And so I think both mental health for our students and our preference policy are still, preference policy for me is still one of our biggest challenges.
Mahalo. Maynard.
I would agree with both Olin and with Michelle. I mean, in the university, we are looking at a challenge to many of our Title III programs, many of the Native Hawaiian Education Act, a variety of different programs that come to us. So I do know that it is something that we are always vigilantly watching. And I started off by talking about mental health, health and well-being. That's a huge risk right now. You know, my husband and I were at Michigan State University for about 16 years, and we just recently experienced that university having a shooter on campus. And, you know, you don't ever feel like it's ever going to be that close to you. Mental health, our wellness of our children, the community around them, that's a huge risk right now that we are facing every single day that I walk on campus, or that any teacher or any parent taking their child to school is facing right now. And while we can see the different risks, I go back to what is our responsibility? What are we doing as a community together to create a safer environment for our young people?
Mahalo. Since we have the time, I want to build on your responses earlier about Aina. And let's tee it up this way. I was reading a statement of Ke'omokukapu from Maui saying, we're not from a place, we're of a place. What does that mean? And what does it mean in terms of the management of the Kamehameha School's assets, land assets? We're not from a place, we're of a place. Michelle?
He doesn't ask easy questions, does he?
No, it's the semantics of
I
language.
would go back to what I said earlier, that we're one and the same, right? That Aina and Kanaka, that we are of the land is us. And I think that we've moved over time away from that notion and that concept, and why we see the numbers that we struggle with, the disproportionate rates of health disparities amongst our people. And as we start to think about some of the successes with culture-based learning, with place-based learning, with getting people with their hands back in the dirt and the healing that happens, I think that that's what we're talking about, that we're not just from someplace, we are the land and the land is us. And so as we plant and grow food and care for the land, that the health of that land reflects in the health of our people. And that is how I see what that means, that we are of Aina, not from Aina.
Mahalo. Olin?
You wanna go?
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just going to use my life as an example. Like when I think of that question, like when we took kuleana of our lo'i, we didn't get instructions, and I actually preferred that because you get the kilo, right? So we're of that land. And so over the last years, I just found these wonderful things. Like for example, I found lilies up Mauka, and I thought, oh, it would be really nice in the lo'i. So I put the lilies there. Turns out that the roots just completely clog the awai. And so, shucks, got to pull them out. You know? And so all this learning, because we're of the place, and so we're able to then resurrect. So I also do things like my auntie in Mississippi. My pure Hawaiian grandma was living in Mississippi, so I have an auntie there. She wants fresh poi, but how do you mail that? And so I'm thinking, well, I'm an innovator, I can figure that out. So I'm now up to 1 year and 3 months of figuring out how to preserve fresh poi without it souring, without refrigeration. That's being of the land, right? Because my ancestors did that, the kilo, right? I also think being of the land means that time is important. Like for example, when you work at the gates of the fish pond and you followed your traditional moon calendars and when you would open them and close them, but with climate change, is that really still the same calendar? And so I think there's an opportunity for us to also be of this place and bring in new technologies and innovation. So like for example, we worked on a project where using machine learning, we can put cameras there and count the fish going in and out. You know, this one's going in, this one's going out, the different size and species, and compare that and figure out, that did change the fish behavior a little bit, and we can modify that. So we're of this place where we're adding to that story. So it's not a story that is handed to us that is static, but rather this amazing journey that if you just jump right in, you don't have to worry about where you start because we all fit in. So that's my answer to that.
Mahalo.
I think those are great answers to the of-from semantic debate that we can have with the English language, which I would rather not have. But what I thought of when you both were telling the story, at West Oahu, all of our student success counselors and advisors are trained in Auntie Poa Burgess's beloved community curriculum. And she tells this wonderful story about, this kid who a lot of people don't think, has much, to offer. But this kid is a great diver and always brings fish home to his family and feeds his family. That's what he does. And so he is the place. This is, and she talks about how when you go to Tamura's grocery store, you know everybody that you want to see, and you see people that you don't want to see because you're of the community, right? You're of the place, right? And so I think the teaching of beloved community, the teaching of knowing that you are part of a place and a community and a family. I think that's the important piece.
Mahalo. So we're going to ask you now to conclude your part of the event tonight by offering some closing remarks. And it's about the evening, about your background, about your future, and as a Kamehameha Schools trustee. We'll begin with you, Ola.
So I guess this is where I make the case, but I'm not going to do that. I see this as, I love these two women, and so I see this as really an amazing opportunity to share, talk story. I mean, if I've earned your letter of support or your support in this process, I really encourage you to reconsider that. Like, think about something you liked from them and submit another letter on their behalf as well, too, because I think this is too important for the court to get this wrong. And so we have to be open to just being free. I mean, there's no limits to what a group can do, and it doesn't matter who gets the credit. So I really do believe that. So that's my first point, is I think I encourage you to submit a letter. I did. I sent them both letters of support, so I think it's a wonderful way for us to nurture each other. So the Kamehameha Schools on their strategic plan has nurture the keiki, and the lahui thrives. But I think it's beyond just the keiki. I think we got to nurture each other too. We have to be kind. We have to take care of each other. So that's my first point. I think my second point is, as big and as influential as Kamehameha Schools is, it's just not big enough. Like, we've got too many keiki out there. It breaks my heart, some of the stories that I've seen in the work that I do. Like, we have a student, one of our students in Purple Maya, he was playing football. And so he was late every week, Monday through Friday, and his coach started scolding him like, Brada, you got to come to practice when I tell you you got to be in practice, but he was always late. So finally the next week, the coach sat him down and was like, how come you're late? So this kid, this humble kid, he said, Coach, I don't have any shoes. And so my dad works the night shift. I run home, I grab his shoes, and I run back, and I go to practice. And what year is this that some of our kids don't have shoes? Like those wraparound services that we talked about. I think it's our kuleana too. So to the extent that I can encourage you, me, recommit myself, like, we got to jump in there. We have to nurture kids. There's only so much we can do at Kamehameha Schools. And as a trustee, for example, for me, I think that's where we got to also push and push and push, so that we then can take care of some of the kids and get their back as well too. So that's my closing statement.
Mahalo. Michelle?
I guess in closing, I just mahalo folks for taking interest in this process. And will say that, again, in all of the experiences that I've had to this point, I look forward to the opportunity and the possibility of taking that to the boardroom as a trustee. Whether in the for-profit or nonprofit sector, I've worked in private and public sector, and now in philanthropy. The Hawaiians have always been at the core. Our lahui has always been at the core of what has driven me for my entire career. And so I just look at this opportunity and think about this, where we all sit today. As Olin said, different experiences, different things that we each bring to the table, but the diversity of experiences and the voices and the communities, I look forward to the opportunity of sharing that as a trustee. I agree with Olin. I'm proud of the selectees that have been coming out from committee in the last few rounds. I think we're doing better and better, that those voices and people and leaders have been more reflective of our communities, more connected to the communities that we're all part of. And so for that, I'm really grateful. Just thank everyone for being here. I agree with Olin in terms of submit your comments. Let's make sure that the court gets this right. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Michelle. Minette?
Well, it's been absolutely wonderful to be here with you, Neil, and with my two brilliant colleagues here sitting with me. Just to hear your stories has been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. One of the most noble professions is that of a teacher. And choosing to be a teacher has been the calling of my life. And what I bring to everything that I do is at the core, is always being a teacher who wants to be a co-learner in the classroom, who will push, who will question, who will be prepared, who will have a great deal of integrity, because through this process, as I've said before, we cultivate a dynamic and caring humanity, which is so very important right now in our world. And I agree with you that Kamehameha is small in terms of the global vastness of challenges that we face. But what Kamehameha can do is that it has the power to convene and to partner and to sew this net so that together we can strengthen what we do, so that at the Pico, which is our youth, our next generation of citizenry, of learners, of leaders, so that we can be strong enough so that Pico gets strong as well. So important to do through partnership. I am always grateful for the care and the love of my family that has helped me become a teacher, and for all the teachers that I have worked side by side with over my career, many who are here at Kamehameha schools, many who I work with in the university. And I just want to close by telling you one last story of how important it is for all of us to work collectively and to tell the stories that we have to tell. When I was asked to work for the Kellogg Foundation's Native American Higher Education Initiative, NAHI, I was brought into a room of tribal college university presidents. These were a group of people who told Kellogg that if they wanted to fund tribal colleges, they would not compete for the money that Kellogg was going to give them, because it was all of them or none of them. That was the first time this large philanthropic foundation was challenged, and Kellogg was able to meet that challenge and fund all of them. And that's the other thing with Kamehameha and our broader Hawaiian community. It's got to be all of us or none of us together, working to be a healthy Lahui together. And we can do that through partnerships. So that's my teaching for tonight.
Mahalo, Mainet. So my last question is to you. Those of you here in this audience, the auditorium, as well as watching on streaming. What do you think? Lend your voice to this process. If you need more information, one place to start is the Kamehameha Schools Alumni Association Oahu Region website, where you find the resumes, the cover letters, and the vision statements of our 3 trustee finalists. Another place is to ask them and seek them out and find out more information. And finally, you had the benefit of this wonderful presentation tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge our 3 trustee finalists for their role and their interesting sharings tonight and profound insights and the integrity and leadership that you show here tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. So now we turn back to our sponsors, the Kamehameha Schools Alumni Association, to bring us to a close this evening. And we thank all of you for being here and for tuning in and being a part of this process. So, Monty, is that you?
One more time, please. E ho mai ka pai lima for our moderator and for our panelists. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. If you didn't get your bento and you don't want to take it home, I will, but We still have it outside for you. And so as our closing, we're going to stand and sing school song. Hopefully you remember it. If you're a student, you better know it because you have to sing it this Friday. E olu olu mai e kukako iluna ai ho'okahi leo kako. It's in G, but I'm a little sick, so I might pitch it differently. So, in fact, they have perfect pitch over here. They're playing it. Okay, hit it, girls.
Yeah.
Hi, mahalo ya'oko. Thank you for coming tonight. This is a good time to launa. If you didn't say hello to the person next to you, now is a great time. Don't forget, we do have some merchandise outside. And you know, everything in the world is going up in prices. So after tonight, we're going to have $100 to everything. So buy it tonight. Okay, mahalo.